After about 5 months, it's time to finally get into the last major chunk of the Xeno series with Xenosaga, Tetsuya Takahashi's second attempt at perfect works. To make a long story short, while Takahashi was working on plans for Xenogears 2, Square cancelled it in favor of Final Fantasy The Spirits Within. A business decision that, didn't exactly go well. So Takahashi and some other Square Enix employees left the company to found monolithsoft, and with Bandai as their publisher, he set out to try and tell the story of Xenogears again with Xenosaga, a sci-fi space opera that was originally going to be a 6-part series. Compared to Xenoblade and Gears, I've not heard a ton of things about this series. I know it's generally considered good, but honestly that's about it. It seems to me that Saga's stuck as the red-headed stepchild for the Xeno series. I could have looked up why, but I think it would be more fun for you, the viewer, if I went in blind and maybe figured it out for myself, starting with episode 1, Der Will zur Macht. And to any Germans watching this, I deeply apologize for making you cringe just now. The story of Xenosaga stars Shion Uzuki, the chief scientist for a company called Vector, who's been assigned to the Wageland to research and create an anti-Gnosis weapon called Cosmos. The Gnosis are a massive group of mysterious ghost aliens that appeared 14 years ago, and for unknown reason have an innate hatred for humanity. Making things worse is that the Gnosis are normally virtually invincible since they exist on a higher plane, so actually killing them is easier said than done. Episode 1 of Xenosaga really does feel like the first part in a much larger story. About 80% of the plot is set up for future conflicts, both for the overall story and the characters themselves, with most of them having their pasts shrouded in some level of mystery. Honestly, I was really enjoying all of the setup. It left me very intrigued and excited to learn more about what's going on in later games, especially whatever the deal with the Zohar is, because it has a, very familiar shape. I will say though, I was kinda surprised with how many cutscenes were in the first 6 hours of the game. This isn't a bad thing at all, since I was still enjoying myself, but it kind of felt like I was watching a movie after a certain point. I also found myself really liking the main cast so far. They were all interesting for me in one way or the other, and I was surprised that despite being on the cover of the game, Cosmos isn't actually the protagonist and her creator is. So far, Shion is pretty interesting for a main character, with her being pretty different compared to most JRPG protagonists, and it's kind of a nice change of pace for me. The one downside to how Xenosaga Episode 1 handles its story though is that at the moment there's not that much to talk about with the plot. Like I said, it left me pretty interested and I was really enjoying myself, but most of what's going on here for the time being is just mystery. This is basically my way of saying this video, much to my surprise, won't actually have a spoiler section. I'm certain that'll change with episodes 2 and 3 though. That being said, the gameplay and combat actually does have a good amount to talk about, because like with the story, I was very surprised because Xenosaga's combat is kinda like a better version of Xenogears combat. So let me start this off by saying just how cathartic it is to finally use Cosmos in a Xeno game as a fan of Xenoblade 2. I have played through that game three separate times, and not once have I pulled her. Making things better for me is that she's a fantastic party member, but more on that later. Unlike a lot of RPGs at the time, in Xenosaga, random encounters are completely absent and enemies can be seen on the overworld. Something actually kinda interesting about this though is that by using the vaporizer plugin on certain special barrels, you can create a sort of trap that an enemy can step on for various bonuses in battle. They're spaced out enough that I didn't get to use them a ton, but this is a kinda neat idea I hope future entries do more with. As for actual combat though, you have 3 different attacks. Close-ranged square attacks, long-range triangle attacks, and special circle attacks that work as finishers. Similar to Xenogears, you can use as many attacks as you have AP, but your circle attacks are a bit different. While each party member has a base singular circle attack at all times, they also have a special tech attacks they can learn throughout the game, and you can set these as finishers for your 4 different combos. These special attacks also require 6 AP to use, so you'll need to either guard or only attack once so you can use the character's technique on their next turn. Aside from Chaos, Cosmos was probably my favorite character to use in the game, due in large part to her technique attacks. They all hit really hard, and maybe it's just the fact that this one is functionally an ab laser, but her animation for X-Buster was the coolest thing. Each character also has their ether abilities, but unless it was for healing, I never really felt that I needed to use them. Their main attacks felt strong enough that anything besides basic support abilities didn't feel too useful. I do really like the game's skill system though. You see, in battle, you can earn points to not only upgrade your tech attacks and unlock new ether abilities, but you can also get SP that you can use to let a party member permanently inherit an effect from an accessory. The various skills and techniques are great, but you can also use some of your EP to transfer a character's ether ability to another. This is actually why I like Chaos so much, because aside from his great damage output, he makes for a fantastic healer, and he became the backbone of my party once I gave him Xion's Medica All. I will say though, despite that, I didn't use this system too much, but I really do like the idea behind it, and I kinda hope it comes back in later games. On the note of things coming back though, I also hope the mechs return with some improvements. They're not terrible, but they are kinda awkward to actually use. You see, unlike Xenogears or Chained Echoes, you can't start in them. Instead, you have to waste a turn getting into it. It also doesn't help that only 3 characters get a mech and they're kind of expensive to upkeep. And admittedly, I never really felt like I ever needed to use them. Kind of a shame, but we're only on the first game. There's 2 more titles to hopefully get this right. Aside from that though, there's one more aspect of combat that I really enjoy, and this is where we come back to Xenogears. You see, in Xenogears, the combat was conceptually interesting and the death blows were pretty cool and flashy, but in execution it lacked the necessary depth to be engaging for more than one playthrough. In Xenosaga though, combined with its normal attacks, you also have the boost system. During combat, as everyone attacks, they build up their boost gauge, and they can get a maximum of 3 points each. You can use this to boost a character that's already gone or isn't present on the event board, and allow them to get a turn, and if multiple characters have enough, you can even get multiple turns before a single enemy even attacks. However, enemies can also boost themselves, and in some cases they can even revenge boost if you attack them a lot. If an enemy's boosted before you have, that will actually prevent you from boosting at all, and if they boost when you already have, their own turn will take priority over yours. In normal enemy encounters, this isn't too bad, but in some boss fights, you'll need to strategically charge up and use your boosts to get the most out of damage and healing, because these can get pretty hard. The Domo Carrier was the first fight that really tested my mettle with its tremor ability, but probably the one that gave me the most trouble without spoilers was easily Tiamat. Tiamat's whole gimmick is that it would react with a few different pools of attacks depending on if it went after Xion or another character named Junior. The attacks for the latter aren't too bad, but for Xion he has one specific attack he likes using called Ruined Earth. Ruined Earth is an AoE attack that deals at best close to 300 damage and at worst can deal over 350 if it crits. This frustrated me to no end, and for a short period of time my thoughts were that this guy was insanely unfair until I learned how this gimmick actually worked. Once I understood what was going on, I actually started having a lot of fun. For Tiamat, since it can only use Ruined Earth if it goes after Xion, all I have to do is try to build up or give other characters boost points to keep him from going after her. For as frustrating as the RNG was, I left the fight having had a great time despite that, but admittedly I could easily see some people still finding this unfair. The one fight I can almost confidently say is unfair though is the boss fight against Gigas, and it's all because of this frickin' jerk right here. Gigas' whole gimmick is that each half, despite having the same look and amount of health, have 2 separate move pools. The left gimmick has some harder hitting attacks and some nasty AoEs when it gets low on health, but the right Gigas has one specific move it enjoys using every now and then that inflicts guaranteed instant death on a party member. Thanks to how hard the left Gigas can hit, and that, while very rare, it's entirely possible the right Gigas can use instant death twice in a row, this fight becomes absurdly annoying very fast. Maybe there was a strategy I was missing that makes this fight a joke, but as it currently stands, this guy is easily my least favorite non-spoilery fight in the game. Because it's one thing for a fight to do a lot of damage, it's another thing when they can guarantee one-shot you no matter what your level is. As the start to a much larger story, Xenosaga does a fairly nice job. The story does a great job of setting up for later entries while also having some really interesting world building. Its gameplay isn't perfect by any means, with the mechs being fairly hard to use effectively, and the normal attacks being better than a lot of the offensive ether skills, but it had a great amount of strategy in boss fights, even if some of those same fights could have maybe used a little more fairness to their RNG at points. I'm kinda surprised this video turned out as short as it did, but I got a feeling episodes 2 and 3 will be different, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to playing through episode 2. Episode 1 left a pretty good first impression on me, so hopefully the second one's even better. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice day.